Okay, so as you can see from the agenda, we have quite a few things to go through today, and it's a lot of important information. So if you can, please stay with us, stay active and engaged. We are going to go ahead and kick it off with a very short video.
Greetings, Vols Abroad. I'm John Zomcher, Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor.
And I'm Gretchen Neisler, Vice Provost for International Affairs.
We want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your decision to elevate your volunteer experience through study abroad. Your dedication to global education and cultural exchange truly exemplifies the volunteer spirit. By stepping beyond your comfort zone, you will gain a diverse perspective and contribute to our increasingly interconnected world. Your decision to study abroad reflects a commitment to personal growth and academic excellence. You will learn more about yourself, the world around you, grow in your knowledge, skills, and sense of purpose, and discover the beauty of new places, cultures, people.
In a world of increasing global connectedness, there's a need for strong communication and interpersonal skills, adaptability, and leadership skills. By going abroad, you are moving beyond the classroom to develop the education competencies and real world experiences that employers seek.
And you will also have a chance to make a difference both abroad and back home. You will have a chance to share what it means to be a volunteer and further develop your own commitment to service and leadership. The volunteer spirit can profoundly impact the world, and the torch you carry will indeed light the way for others along your journey.
And remember, you're not alone. The Programs Abroad Office within the Center for Global Engagement is here to support you at every stage of your Vols Abroad experience, allowing you to confidently explore opportunities outside of your comfort zone.
So, Vols Abroad, we wish you safe travels and
Go Vols!
Okay. So that is our vice provost and of course the provost. So they wish you well in your journeys. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is the setting expectations. So this is basically what is expected of you when you're abroad. So we'll unpack these just a little bit. So one is please remember you're an ambassador of the US and of UTK, so please act accordingly. Also remember that there are consequences to violations of behavioral and academic expectations, and that you still have to maintain the UTK Student Code of Conduct even though you're abroad. So the first thing is whether you like it or not, you will be an ambassador of both UTK and the US while you're abroad. In some locations, you may be one of many students from the US that people in the host country will meet or will have met. In other locations, you may be one of a very few, or maybe even the only student from the US that they will have ever met. So just remember that whether you like it or not, you are an ambassador of the US and of University of Tennessee abroad. Also remember something to note is that while politics and religion are not necessarily like polite conversation starters in the US, around other areas in the world, it is completely okay to ask about political stance, religious leanings, all of those kinds of things. So don't be surprised if somebody asks you what you think about XYZ political policy in the US, or whether you or what kind of religion you adhere to, or if you are religious, or what does that look like, and all of that kind of stuff. We have heard from some students that students sometimes have found it useful to prepare some answers ahead of time, or at least to think about it ahead of time in case they're asked this, because again, it's not generally a very common thing in the US. So just be aware of that. Also be aware that there are consequences for violations of behavioral, and I will add academic expectations. The academic expectations aren't that different from what you would normally probably see on campus, but the behavioral expectations are a little bit different. So just be aware that, again, especially for behaviors that endangers you or someone else, we are required to report that to the appropriate authorities, whether that's UTK authorities or state authorities or whatever. We are required by law to do that. So just keep that in mind. It could be that as a result of any behavior that would not be okay on a program, that you could undergo conduct sanctions. So student code of conduct could be involved. There might be an investigation. It could lead to early dismissal from the program. It could lead to you needing to come home, could lead to a lot of things. The last thing that I'll mention here is the legal repercussions. So this is obviously very rare, but occasionally there are legal repercussions to how you behave in a different country. I think Sean is going to mention a little bit more about this in his health and safety part. But the big thing to remember is that if you are arrested or go to jail, there's not a lot we can do to help you. The most we can do to help you basically is to put you into contact with an embassy, and they then can help you maybe get a lawyer, but we have no jurisdiction in foreign countries. So as much as you can before you go abroad, learn about the local customs and laws and things like that. And don't get in trouble. All right, so another kind of switching gears here, these are cultural expectations. So as you probably know, cultural expectations vary, obviously, from culture to culture. So some of the things on this slide are things that we hear a lot from students abroad about things that they are maybe having a little bit of trouble adjusting to culturally. So it's things that they encounter either through a homestay or visiting a family, maybe at a holiday or things like that. National identity, we've talked about a little bit, right? As far as like, I think it's weird that they're asking me about my religion or my politics. This doesn't seem normal to me. This is very different. So we touched on that a little bit. One of the things that we hear a lot from students is the air conditioning. The US runs on air conditioning, especially in the South, right? This is very different. Most of the rest of the other world does not use air conditioning as much as people in the United States do. Um, and then similarly, like laundry expectations or expectations around laundry, like the frequency of doing laundry and things like that are just different depending on where you are. So again, just kind of be aware of that. And then communication, right? Are we directly communicating? Are we indirectly communicating? All of those things are good things to know about your host culture before you go. And we'll get into a couple of these examples later on with like more specific cultural examples of things. But just be prepared with that. A couple questions that would be really useful, I think. These really helped me when I was much younger and studying abroad or living abroad was, is it wrong or is it different? That was one that really helped me kind of frame my mind around like, it's probably not wrong. It's probably just not maybe the way that I'm used to doing something like laundry or the air conditioning. And then the second half of that one that we use a lot with students here is it different? Is it just different or is it dangerous? So again, using the air conditioning example, like you may not have air conditioning if your apartment's 85 degrees, that's probably just different, right? If your apartment is 140 degrees, that's dangerous. So all of those things you need to kind of take into account. So those two questions are, is it wrong or different? And is it just different or is it dangerous? If it's dangerous, please reach out to somebody, either your affiliate that you are working with or your faculty leader or the Vols Abroad email. Get in touch with somebody so that we can help you mitigate that. All right, let's talk a little bit about academics abroad. So basically, when you study abroad at UTK, we think about it kind of in terms of two types of programs. So there are the programs that we call transfer credit, which is where you're taking credit through another entity and you're transferring it back to UTK. Or there's the programs where you are on a UTK program specifically taught by UTK faculty usually, and you're getting UTK credit for it. So here are the two columns on this slide. You can read about like the types of programs that you might be involved in, but basically one thing to know specifically is my GPA affected by my abroad grades? And so for transfer credit programs, you need to know that your Hope Scholarship may be affected by your grades as it translates to your GPA. On a UT credit program, you need to know that your UT scholarships and the Hope may be affected by your grades in terms of GPA. The other thing about this is that for the request for transfer credit, there's a form that's floating around. If you are in a transfer credit program, you should fill that form out, or in fact, you should have already filled it out. If you haven't, stick around at the end. There will be more information about it. If you're on a UTK credit program, you're enrolled in a UTK course, you don't need to fill that out. So don't worry about that. So the biggest thing here is like the academic expectations. Again, students need to know when you're thinking about is the course going to transfer or not, is the course degree applicable? If it's yes, then awesome. And then how do I transfer the credits? That's where that credit transfer form comes in. For transfer credit form, be sure that you've completed that in the Vols Abroad portal. And then you can actually check on the progress of the form. At the end of the presentation, we're going to save some time for what we call like extras. It's like extra information. So Tessa will go over that there. For UTK credit programs only, again, you're enrolling in that. You just need to enroll in the appropriate courses on My UTK. So that's the difference there. If you have questions, please pop them in the chat about that. Or again, especially with the transfer credit form, we'll be digging into that a little bit deeper at the end. For finances, especially financial aid and scholarships, students always want to know, is it going to count? Is my financial aid and scholarships going to count? So the best advice I can give you is to get in touch with One Stop because they will be able to look up your specific situation, your specific scholarships. They are the experts on this. So what I'm going to tell you is, generally speaking, this is how we understand it works. But for your specific situation, you need to go and talk to One Stop. So for the transfer credit, again, are these credits going to be recognized by UTK? That's what the form is for UTK to say like, oh, yes, we've approved these courses for you to come back. Are they going to count towards your program of study? That's another CPOS, right? You need that. And then are you registered through the Programs Abroad office? So basically, did you apply for your program through us, or are you going rogue and trying to go around us, or you didn't know that you were supposed to apply through us? We don't know. We can't give you credit if we didn't know you were studying abroad. And then UTK credit, this one is like super easy, you guys, because it's basically, did you enroll in your course? Yes. Does it count towards CPOS? Yes. Perfect. Great. So that's not really any different from what it would be like if you were taking a course on campus. Another thing to remember is the dates and deadlines. So at UT, any program fee that is charged by us, anything that's going to be charged by UTK will be in your My UTK portal and is subject to the dates and deadlines as outlined by Bursar. You can follow the QR code here to find all of those. If you are paying your program fee directly to a provider or another institution or an affiliate that you're going with, then you are subject to their dates and deadlines, which they should have communicated with you via website or probably emails as well. Excess financial aid refunds are generally available 2 to 3 weeks after the start of the UTK term. And again, just a reminder, the QR code is there in case you want to get those dates. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is passports. This is pretty easy stuff, but just in case. So we've got passports, do's and don'ts, and Katie, who made the slides, gave us a very nice thumbs up, thumbs down, just so we can remember. So one, make sure your passport is signed and all of the information is correct before uploading it into the Vols Abroad portal. We've had students who haven't signed it. It's not valid. If you don't sign it, please sign it. We've had students who a week before their trip have realized their name is spelled incorrectly. Please make sure everything is correct on your passport before you upload it. Also, another thing, and we're going to say this a lot, make sure that if you have applied for a visa, the information on your passport and your visa match 100%. If it doesn't, you probably will have issues at the border trying to get in or out of the country. So please make sure that those things match. Another thing that you should do is lock your passport in your luggage or another secure spot when not in use. So again, if you're on a faculty-directed program, you don't know where to put it, ask your faculty. Most of the places that you will be staying usually have some kind of a safe or something. Sometimes at a hotel, the front desk will keep it for you, whatever. But I would actually like keep it in a safe place, in the safe, in your room, if you can. That would be awesome. Also, check your passport validity requirements. Most places that you're traveling abroad require you to have a valid passport 6 months past the date, past the end date of your program, basically. So just make sure that your expiration date is not before that. That would be great. And then the last thing, again, your name on your passport, your name on your visa, they should match. Please make sure that we do or that they do. We don't want any emergency phone calls. And honestly, there's not a lot we can do at that point. We can say, we're so sorry, but make sure that they match. Please don't make any other marks in your passport beside your signature that are not made by a government official. So on those pages where your stamps go, don't put anything else in there. And then only mark your signature in blue or black ink. Don't carry the passport around town with you. You should carry a copy of it. So either a picture of it in your phone or a physical copy. You should have something on you that identifies you in case you get stopped or whatever, but not your actual passport, because if it gets stolen, it's a huge pain in the butt. And then the other thing, though, about this is also don't leave your passport behind if you go traveling. So if you're going to stay in, say, a different hotel or you're traveling to a different city or a different country, remember to take your passport with you. You will need it. If you need information or anything about Passport, there's the Passport Services information at the bottom of the screen there. Okay, I'm going to let Sean Lenker take it over from here, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about health, safety, and insurance information.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Yes. So as Kate mentioned, my name is Sean Lanker. I'm Assistant Director for Global Security, Risk, and Resilience in the Global Center for Global Engagement. So I'm here today to talk to you about some of those things. So we're going to talk about some resources that you have available while you're abroad, including our assistance provider, Crisis 24, and insurance, which is Chubb. We'll talk about common incidents that we've seen abroad, just so that you're aware and can prepare accordingly. We'll talk about some global security risks and emergency action plan, including resources that you have available to you while you're abroad. We're going to talk again about alcohol and drug use. It's going to be a common theme that you'll hear us talk about because it is a big issue and leads to some of the incidents that we see while abroad. And I'll talk a little bit about physical and mental health and what you can be doing now before you travel to start preparing for those types of things. So I'm going to kick this off with Crisis 24. So Crisis 24, as I mentioned, is UT's 24/7 medical security and emergency assistance provider. It's a really great company, and it can be a really helpful resource, both if you need assistance while abroad. That is kind of their bread and butter. So you can always reach out to them at the hotline number provided there. Um, they're just a great resource. So if you needed help, say you had concerns because there was a protest that popped up in your host city and you weren't sure how to navigate around it, you can call them and they can help you navigate that situation. Say you needed to find a local clinic or hospital. Say you were traveling on the weekend, to Kate's point, and away from the program leader, so you weren't sure who to ask. You can call Crisis 24 and say, I need help finding a health clinic, and they will be able to find you not only a health clinic, but one that's reputable and will make sure that you're getting good care and will monitor the situation. And an added benefit of Crisis 24 is that they also have medical team on staff, including nurses and doctors. So if you were in the hospital, for example, they could review your medical information if you give them permission to do so and make sure you are receiving appropriate care while you're abroad. It can also be used as a pre-trip resource. And so this is where we have a link. Maybe we actually have a resource folder full of links. I'll be talking about various links. I know you guys cannot click on the screen. And so we'll drop that in the chat so that you can click along as we go along, and it will have some of this information. So one thing I would recommend you do before you travel, you can do this now, is you can start creating your Crisis 24 UT login or profile. So basically you go to this link, make sure you're using your at tennessee.edu email address, not at UTK. It has to be at tennessee.edu. And then you can create a profile, and that's where you can start looking on the side and see risk information related to your specific country, or even city for bigger cities, and start getting a sense of, okay, what do I need to be aware of? What should I be doing to help keep myself safe, for example? One of the benefits of utilizing Crisis 24 if needed while abroad is that they can usually work with the medical provider to do direct payment for medical care. That's a great benefit because then you don't have to pay for things out of pocket. That's not always possible. It really depends on the medical provider. I think most of the time the medical providers just want to be paid, and so they're happy to take that direct payment. But there might be circumstances where you might have to pay out of pocket and then save your receipts and go through the reimbursement process. So let me show you that next part, because Crisis 24 is not that health insurance. This will be your health insurance if I can get to the next page. Oh, sorry, before I get to the health insurance, here's also the apps. So if you want to create create your profile, I would recommend that you download the app before you travel. You can see here, you can download it on the Apple App Store or the Google App Store, which I know are the two main mobile carriers these days. It's really great to do it that way. It's just so you have it. Especially if you turn on your location services, and no, don't worry, it does not drown your battery or anything like that, or drain your battery. The benefit of having it on your phone is, one, that you can easily pull it up and say, I need assistance, and then you can just hit a button and it will connect you to that call center immediately. And it will also, if you would enable location services, it will be able to tell where you're at. And so it gets very granular. So it could say, hey, there's let's say there's a protest, or there was an apartment fire right here on this street. You're only a block away. You should be aware of this, right? So it can be really great. I do recommend, one, download the app, and two, do share your location services. We're not going to be like monitoring you. We cannot monitor you or like see like what you're doing. So don't worry about that. Okay, so there's two different resources that work in tandem with each other. So one is our assistance services, which is Crisis 24, and then on the back end is Chubb. This is our international health insurance. Like I said, if you work with Crisis 24 from the get-go, from when you need assistance, not only can they help you find a place to go, but they can also usually work with that provider to do that back end billing, so that you don't have to worry about paying for it out of pocket. Coverage, we will be sending this before your program. So probably, I know your number of you are going in the next few weeks. Just be on the lookout for your email. We'll be sending you information both about Crisis 24 and Chubb, including Chubb's benefit brochure, which I do recommend you read through it carefully. That'll help you better understand what's covered, what's not covered. It's a really great coverage. I always joke that I wish that we had it available here domestically, just because it covers a lot of things 100%, right? That does, if you're not utilizing Crisis 24 or having to pay out of pocket, that does mean you still have to pay for those things, but then they should be covering you if you submit for reimbursement. And so we can help you navigate those situations if you ever do need to submit a claim for reimbursement. If we needed to utilize, or say something happens abroad, knock on wood, related to a medical or security emergency that required an evacuation, we'd also be working with Crisis 24 and Chubb to make sure that happens. So rest assured that that's all kind of covered. You're not going to be stuck with some bill because you needed to get evacuated for a covered medical issue. Please note that Crisis 24 and Chubb are not travel insurance. So what do we mean by health insurance versus travel insurance? So health insurance is medical insurance. This is what is going to be covering you if you get sick or injured abroad, and it'll help cover those bills. It's not going to cover things like delayed flights or missed flights or lost luggage or stolen items. That's travel insurance, and that is not covered under our insurance. If that's something that you're interested in, that is something that you'll need to explore and find on your own. I've had, students in the past have covered things like their phone or their laptop, expensive items, maybe a digital camera, things like that. And so that's not going to be covered by Chubb, especially electronic devices. Every year I talk about this, and every year we do have students asking, hey, can I actually, my phone was stolen. Can I get that covered by insurance? The answer is going to be no. So if you are interested in something like that, please look into it now and purchase something that fits your particular needs. A few other notes here. like I said, please do review that policy brochure before when you receive it in the coming days or weeks, just so that you are aware of what it's covering, what it's not covering, things that are not covered, or things like routine dental care and physicals. That's not really its purpose. It's supposed to be for, you know, um, injuries or illnesses and things like that. So if you had an injury that it impacted your teeth, that would be covered. If it's something you just need, hey, I need to get my routine cleaning, that's not going to be covered. Also, when you do get your brochure and review it, I will both in the resource that we already shared with you, but also at the end, there's my email address. You can always reach out with any questions or concerns you have related to Chubb or Crisis 24. This website here, I would recommend you scan that, maybe save it, bookmark it. It's going to take you to the CGE's page that has all this information. So if you want a sneak peek at the brochure, it's going to be on that page. This will also have Crisis 24 information. I know there's a lot of information we're throwing at you today, so that's why you want to bookmark some of these. This is also the web page if you did pay for something out of pocket and needed to go through reimbursement. It has the reimbursement form, for example, in the process, who you need to email, things of that nature. So it's a really helpful page, and I'd recommend you bookmark it now. I'm going to pivot a little bit. So what are the kind of common incidents that we see abroad? We went over resources that are available to help prevent incidents. That's Crisis 24. You can start reading about risk information, what's going on in my host country that I should be aware about. But, things do happen, life happens. And so what are some of the types of incidents that we do see every year and what that we respond to? We do see a lot of that lost and stolen items, which is why I was kind of harping on the how our insurance isn't going to cover some of these things. Similar to like what you might see in Knoxville, it's a lot of like more petty crime, opportunistic crime where an individual might steal a, laptop or a phone, whether that's on, I think public transportation is always an area you want to be careful about, keep your bag in front of you, for example. Or, I've had students in the past, like maybe going out to study at a cafe and they run to the bathroom and they leave their laptop on the table. That is not a good idea. Do not do that, right? Take your things with you. Do not, as much as I want to live in a world of we can trust all each other, we do not quite live in that world yet. So please do make sure you're taking those precautions. We do see, as I mentioned earlier, probably 80 to 90% of our incidents, if we trace back, was alcohol involved before the incident took place. The answer is usually yes. And so that's why we talk a lot about it. And I have a whole slide on alcohol, so I'm not going to go into it in detail, but we do see a lot of incidents stemming from alcohol or related to alcohol. And then things like interpersonal conflicts, you might be living with people you've never met before, and similar to like when you moved to UT, right? If you had a randomly assigned roommate, it can be work, right? Trying to meet somebody new and see how they work and how you work and how you guys get along. And so just know, if you are ever having an issue in that area, that's something that you can reach out to your program leader about or your program affiliate about. Our goal for any incident is always to try to tackle it while it's still at a low level and not let it grow into a full-blown, crisis or emergency, right? So raise issues often and early is my advice. If you do have, if you are one of the few that get an item lost or stolen every year, the ones that we see every year, do let your program leader know. In some instances, especially for like if you did get insurance, they would usually require a police report. So you would want to make sure you're filing that. The program provider that's supporting the program or the program leader should be able to help you navigate that situation and make sure you're getting to the right place in order to file a report. And this is that reminder that our insurance does not cover those things, cell phones, cameras, computers, etc. If you do lose your passport, this does happen to students every year as well. That's where you're going to have to go to, if you're a U.S. citizen, to a U.S. embassy or consulate in the host country for an emergency passport or replacement passport. And so again, that's where you can work with the program leader or the program provider, and they can help you figure that out. You're not always going to be in that location where the consulate or embassy is at, and so that's where there might be some more logistics involved. Just know that you're not alone, and that we can support you through that process. And then please make sure you're saving, the address, phone number of consulate in your phone, or an online platform. I do recommend, and I'm going to go through emergency resources, and that's always best practice is just save it in your phone now so you're not scrambling to find this number and when you actually need it. And I'd also recommend saving a number of these things, including like when we send you the insurance brochure, we'll have a one pager related to Crisis 24. Save it to an online platform like Google Drive, or something of that nature, SharePoint, so that you can access it easily while you're abroad as well. You're not digging through email. So those are common incidents we see abroad, but what else do we see in the world these days? I think it's, again, similar to what we see in the United States, right? Natural disasters, there's a persistent threat of terrorism across the entire world. Street crime, that's a major one. We do see protests or political unrest in some locations. Usually it's more of the form of protest, but it can grow in some locations to political unrest. So recommendations there is that you're gonna, especially this is something you can be doing now before you travel, is start looking into and doing some research about, like, okay, what are some trusted local news and media outlets that I can follow while I'm abroad? That's a great question too. So, each one of you, and you'll hear me talk about this in-country orientation, you're doing a pre-departure orientation right now. But each one of you, when you go abroad, you're going to have an in-country orientation that's going to be a lot more specific to your program. We have a lot of programs here. We have a lot of individuals going to a lot of different locations. We have to keep it rather general. But that's an opportunity to dig into really specific questions or concerns you have related to your program. And so if you're not sure, like, what's a trusted local news source I can follow while I'm here? Ask that question at your in-country orientation, and they can help link you to it. And then that's something to start following just to see, okay, what's going on in my host city? What's going on in my host country? Because the US media does not usually cover that many, maybe big events abroad, but not the detailed, day-to-day goings-ons. So I'd recommend you follow that. Make sure you can, when you create your profile with Crisis 24, you can sign up for alerts. Again, that's a benefit of having your phone or getting the app on your phone, is that it will push out alerts to you real time. I often get alerts from Crisis 24 before I see any, I can use the example of the tsunami last week, tsunami warnings related to the earthquake, right? They are using things like AI and data mining so that they're really on top of what's going on in the world. And you'll get an alert before you ever get something from, like, the New York Times, right? So it's a great resource. Please do download the app. You can also sign up for the U.S. State Department Alerts and Guidance. That's where you can enroll in this Smart Travelers Enrollment Program, or STEP. You will have to sign up on your own for that. It used to be possible for us to sign people up for STEP, but they've changed their processes and now individuals have to do it themselves. I do recommend that you do that. That will give the local U.S. embassy and consulate in your host country that information that you're abroad. If they push out a travel alert for individuals in that country, it will make sure it's going to you. So I believe you can sign up for both email, and I think you can also sign up for text alerts from them as well. It might depend on the country. But it's something that you should definitely sign up for. It's also included in that resource card in that link that we shared with you. So please take a look at that there. And really, again, because this is a general session and I can't dive into specific programs and locations, I also can't dive into specific, issues related to yourself as an individual human being. But you know yourself probably better than anyone knows you, right? And so this is something, again, that you can be doing right now before you travel, and then you should do this before you travel, is thinking about, who am I and what am I bringing with me while abroad? So, like, what are some issues that different parts of your identity that could or may cause an issue. Maybe it's not going to be an issue. Maybe issue is the wrong word, but something that you're bringing to the table that you will have to navigate while you're abroad, right? And so those can be related to your gender, your sexual orientation, your ethnic identity, your nationality. What are you bringing with you to your specific location, and how are you going to navigate that? Start coming up with a plan now. Other areas to research include things like appropriate dress in your host country. What are some communication styles in your host country that you should be aware of? There's always the kind of stereotypical certain hand gestures that mean one thing in one country and a very different thing in another country, right? And so being aware of those types of things. What are even conceptions of personal space? We have our own conceptions of that in the United States, can be very different from different locations abroad. So that's a lot of areas, and that's, again, where you can use your in-country orientation session to ask really specific questions, because these people have a lot of experience in these locations or may be natives of these locations. And so you can ask really specific questions about, like, communication, dress, things of that nature, to your program leader and the program provider. So please do ask those questions. And then please make sure you're keeping your cell phone charged while you're abroad. If there is an incident, when we reach out, usually we're going to start with, just because we might have a number of people impacted, we'll probably be reaching out via email to do a check-in, or your program leader will be doing an email check-in. So please do monitor your phone, computer for emails. If we're not hearing back from you, that's when we might escalate to phone calls. I've even had to track students down on social media to make sure they're doing okay. So just make sure you know that we're probably going to be reaching out and that you should be please do answer us if we're asking if you're all right, just so that we can know. It's always a good idea too to think about like, okay, how am I keeping my cell phone charged? Something like a power bank, although you should look into your power banks because some are not probably great on flights and things of that nature where pressures are changing. So do a little research on that. Um, but it's a good way to help keep your phone charged or purchase one while you're abroad. Just general best practices to follow. And again, I would say the same thing in Knoxville, right? And so you've now I know you're different levels of your undergraduate career or graduate career at Knoxville, in Knoxville, but you've had to navigate maybe a new city for you. And so it's similar to what you'll be doing when you're abroad. And that is really, especially when you're out in public, staying aware of your surroundings, trying to maintain a low profile and trying to fit in, not standing out, or attracting attention to yourself in a negative way where somebody might be like, oh, there's a rich foreigner, I'm going to go rob them, right? You do not want to be that target. Follow that local guidance. Again, each of your in-country orientation sessions should have a nice section on very specific country or city-specific health and safety guidance, and that's where they'll say, "Hey, do this, don't do this." Um, Especially from this is a great issue area if it's not brought up in your in-country orientation, but you should ask about it, saying like, "Are there parts of the city that I should avoid?" Are there parts of the city that I should avoid at night, right? Any city has areas that might be okay during the day, but changes at night. And so just being aware of that. You're not going to know that unless you've been to the city and are intimately familiar with it. But these people that are running the program should know this stuff and should be able to provide guidance or can ask some questions and figure that out for you. So please do ask that. Always refrain from wearing flashy clothes and jewelry. Consider how your attire may be perceived by the local community. Same with, I think I've had this happen with multiple students, right? Where they might go out for like a morning jog. Some locations around the world are like, what are you doing? Just jogging is not like a part of their culture, right? And so not only are you jogging, but you might be wearing some very form-fitting clothing, and running with a really, $1,500 iPhone and with $300 earbuds in your ears. Well, that is bringing a lot of attention to yourself. And especially with the phone, you want to keep that phone in your pocket. That's really one of the main distractions we see these days. Is not paying attention to what's going on around you. And so try to keep that phone in your pocket. I feel especially these days, people, when they feel uncomfortable, go on their phone. Well, sometimes you need to pay attention to what is happening around you. So put the phone away. Watch your valuables, like I said, especially on things like public transportation. That can be a common area for pickpocketing or for like bag snatching and things like that. There used to be a popular TikTok video from this woman in Italy that would say pickpockets. So things like that. So make sure, again, don't like keep it on the shelf above you or under you. Put it on your lap, right? Just keep things with you. And then I think it's underrated, but you should definitely listen to your gut. We've evolved in certain ways, and our guts are not always right, but they can send us a signal that, hey, again, this might be like, put your phone down and look around you because something doesn't, it feels a little off, right? So just listen to your gut. I do want to plug a page, and this is also included in the links that you can access in the chat, which will take you to this page. So we set up a page that's called the Travel and World Events Updates or World Travel FAQ. That is where we're monitoring kind of really big impacts around the world. There you'll see some guidance around like Russia and Israel and Gaza and things like that on there. But I also want to plug it because especially if you're an international student, I know that we get a lot of inquiries about, okay, what does it mean to go abroad right now as an international student? And what does it mean to return to the United States as an international student? And so know that we do have some resources available to you. If you go to that World Travel and Events Updates page or World Travel FAQ, that will include links to International Student and Scholar Services. That's another unit within the Center for Global Engagement here at UTK they have a whole immigration updates page that you should be aware of and follow. Bookmark that page just because they are constantly monitoring what's happening in the United States and can help give you some guidance. And then you'll want to make sure that you are following. There's certain things, if you're a visa holder in the United States, you need to do before you travel abroad. A lot depends on your visa status and which type of visa you have. They are the experts. So go to that page, reach out to one of their advisors if you have any questions, and they can help you navigate that process. If you do have specific questions related to your own status or to, you're an international student, you're not sure what to do, you can always reach out to me. There's my email at the bottom here. So please do reach out and I will help you connect to the right people or answer any questions you have. Okay, we're going to come back to this topic, which is alcohol, just because it is really important. Like I said, maybe up to 80 to 90% of our incidents are stemming from overconsumption of alcohol. I think it's in a way very stereotypical the what we see every year. It's because students, a number of you are not 21 yet, but you are going to locations where you can legally drink. Most of the world outside the United States, it's like 18 or older. And so you're going for the first time to a place where you can legally buy and consume alcohol and go a little overboard. And so that is where I'm going to say, do not do that. You're putting yourself into a situation, especially if you're out in public, going to bars and clubs and things of that nature. You're putting yourself in situations where you can become seriously injured, even killed. That is, I'm not a fool. I know that a number of you will probably drink, and that's where I'm going to say, please, if you do so, consume alcohol in moderation and do not consume alcohol in excess. Again, especially in locations where you don't know the area, you don't know the language, you don't know the customs. If you are becoming so inebriated that you're drunk and then trying to navigate those situations, that's where you can put two and two together. You can put yourself in danger of, robbery or, just accidents or injuries, things of that nature. And so you definitely don't want to put yourself in that situation. So please do take it seriously. I also encourage you to think about the drinking culture of your host country and the context of how, when, and who drinks. I think one of the stereotypes of Americans abroad is that it's this kind of quote unquote ugly American. And part of our ugliness is that we go and drink to excess and trash the host community or host city, people puking on streets, things of that nature. Think about that. If you were inviting someone over to your house and they behaved in that way, I don't think you'd appreciate it very much. And so don't become part of the stereotype is what I would recommend. So think about that impact that your excessive drinking has on the host community and on the program and on yourself. If you are going out at night, please do use the buddy system. That helps keep you safe and you can keep an eye on each other. And if you do use the buddy system, which you should use, don't leave anyone behind in your buddy group. Make sure you're checking in on each other. Make sure you're doing okay. Don't be taking drinks from people you've just met at a bar and or at a club, for example, as well. So please take that seriously. And then drug use. This is kind of what Kate was talking about earlier. Just don't do it. There's very little, again, if you find yourself in a situation where you get arrested because of drug consumption or drug purchasing, there's very little that we can do. In a lot of locations around the world, drug laws can be a lot more strict than in the United States, even for kind of lower, quote unquote, lower level drugs, including, years in prison. So do not do it is what I would strongly recommend. Again, there's very little that we can do if you are arrested abroad beyond connecting you through the State Department to and there's very little they can do too, which is like giving you a list of lawyers, right? And so you're going to be navigating a complex situation on your own in unfamiliar circumstances. So how do you prevent that? Is just don't do drugs. Don't do drugs abroad. Don't do drugs at all. So please do take that seriously as well. And please do remember that any kind of behavioral violations do follow you back. You are not immune. You don't have like diplomatic immunity because you went abroad, and you're not going to be subject to the misconduct rules on campus. Those are going to apply to you while on this program. So take that seriously as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Brad for an activity.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate all of that helpful information. Hello, everybody. My name is Brad. I'm a senior coordinator here with the Programs Abroad office. Really excited about you all getting out and seeing the world. Looks like we have about 55 participants in the call. So you guys have been listening to us for a second. So we're going to do a little bit of a practical application. We have a case for you to consider. in regard to what Sean was just talking about in alcohol use. So we've got a little bit of a scenario we want you to think through. A couple questions as I present this scenario. Who's involved? Where are they from? And then again, we're going to kind of initiate a couple polls to get your perspective on what's happening in this situation. And this will be good practice because you'll see some polls later on when we're talking about some more cultural experiences. So to get into the case, this is one drink too many. During a break from classes, Sophia, an American sophomore studying abroad in Costa Rica, sits down for lunch with a group that includes a few American students that she met in class. Her classmates invited two locals to show them around for good places to eat. While they're at the restaurant, the locals buy a bottle of guaro, which is a local liquor common to enjoy with meals. It's a Costa Rican tradition, one of them says. Well, this is new to Sophia, but she accepts the glass. The group has a great time, but then the locals order another bottle. Sophia glances around, unsure if she should accept the second glass. Don't worry, it's perfectly normal here, the local reassures her. So the first poll that I'm going to ask is, how comfortable would you be in this circumstance or this situation if you were Sophia? You can answer from a 1 to a 5, 1 being not comfortable, 5 being very comfortable. All right, I see our answers coming in. So one of the things you can see even from our answers coming in is that people have a different level of comfortability with the circumstance. It seems like a bulk of people are right there in the middle, kind of maybe a little bit unsure of what to think about it, not necessarily uncomfortable, but not necessarily comfortable. This is probably a good indicator of how you might feel when you're abroad. Sometimes if you've never been in a circumstance like this, it's hard to tell what you're going to feel. However, let's look at another question that we like to look at is this a cultural difference? Is it a safety concern? Or is it both? So I'm going to initiate that poll and see what you guys think. Is this a cultural difference? Is it a safety concern? Or is it actually both? Okay, I see as answers are coming in, right now about 75, 76% are saying both. There's a few of you that think it's a cultural difference, and then a couple more think of it as a safety concern. There's maybe not a right or wrong answer to this question, but I think the idea that many of you think it's both is probably a good way to entertain this circumstance. To be honest, I'll share the results with you. You can see 77% of people thought it was both. And that's probably a really great way to think about it. One, you're really in you're in an unfamiliar situation. And you don't know exactly, you don't know these people. You don't know exactly what might happen next. So it culturally, you want to be aware, but you also want to really set your own limits. So I can't go to the next slide. Could you forward to the next slide for me? Perfect. So a lot of what we're asking you to do is just think about the cultural connections and differences. In this particular scenario, many drinking ages are different in Latin America. In a lot of countries, you can drink at the age of 18. So some of you might be able to legally drink, and here you might not be able to. Alcohol is woven into a social bonding, and it's not uncommon during meals. And in a lot of Latin American countries, lunch is the biggest meal of the day. So there might be something that in our scene, we don't necessarily drink alcohol at lunch, but in a Latin American country, you might see that more often. Is there a safety concern? Well, one, what is the tolerance to alcohol? Number two, this is, if it's during the middle of the day and you've got to go back to class, you have to think about how you're going to be prepared for what the rest of your day holds, some of your academic concerns there. And then, you're drinking with strangers. You don't know exactly who these people are. You're vulnerable to new surroundings. So a couple things that we want you to think about before you could get into circumstances like this. One, yes, set personal boundaries. Even though you're trying to be a part of the culture that you're visiting, set personal boundaries and don't be afraid to stick to those boundaries. You can decline a drink if that is against a personal boundary of yours. Use apps that share your location with trusted peers so that if something were to happen, something unexpected were to happen, they could track your location. And then communicate with on-site peers and your study abroad team as different situations come up so that you can get an idea of what everybody else is thinking. So I'm going to pass it back to Sean. Thanks for joining me on our case study.
Great. Thank you, Brad. Well, I know we've given you a lot of information already in this health and safety realm. We're going to wrap it up here. We'll just talk a little bit more about just your physical and mental health and the importance of taking care of those. Again, this is like the idea that I was mentioning earlier about kind of prevention or addressing issues when they are still minor so that they don't grow into major issues or emergencies. So that applies like very much so to your physical and mental health. If you find yourself physically having some symptoms related to like stomach upset or something like that, take some, some medication so that you're not dealing with a bigger full-blown crisis later. Same with mental health. You know yourself best. And this goes back to when I'm talking about cultural issues or gender issues or things like that you're bringing with you abroad. Start thinking about it now about what are some mental health challenges or what are some physical health challenges that you deal with in Knoxville that you will be taking with you while abroad. I think I have seen in the past some students have a sort of magical thinking where they think, I'm dealing with this mental health challenge abroad, but abroad's going to change me and I won't have to deal with that. You are going to bring this with you, right? Or you might have new situations or issues that come up while you're abroad. And so, do think about it now while you have the time and luxury of thinking about these things to start developing a plan saying, I know I deal with high anxiety, so how am I going to deal that while I'm in a new location, right? And especially if you're going back to mental health, you might use as part of your coping mechanisms, your support network. And you might not have the same support network while you're abroad. You might have them in a different capacity, whether you can access them with Zoom, Teams, phone, text, whatever. But if you're used to being able to rely on somebody in person and they're not there, there you go. How am I going to deal with that? Right. So think about what you are bringing to the table. Think about what you are dealing with physically and mentally, and start thinking about, okay, that is how I'm going to handle that situation while I'm abroad, because more than likely it is going to come up. If you do have a pre-existing medical condition, we do recommend you talk to your doctor before you travel about how you are going to get adequate care while you're abroad. That might include things like medication, or if you have a specialized, if you need to see specialists, again, we can work with you. We can work with Crisis 24 to set up treatment plans or make medical arrangements, but we need to know about them. So please do reach out if we can be of assistance in that area. If you have a therapist or counselor, I would recommend that you talk to them before you travel abroad, because part of what they can do is help you come up with that plan, saying, okay, I'm going abroad. That's going to be a big change for me. So how am I going to deal with that X, Y, or Z while I'm abroad? A lot of therapists and counselors, post-COVID, have been willing to work with their clients while they're abroad. That wasn't always the case before COVID. So that's something you could discuss with them as well. If that's something they cannot provide, but you do want to, you're used to talking to a therapist or counselor, know that we can help set you up with that while you're abroad as well. Please make sure you probably remember from your Vols Abroad portal application, you had a very long physical and mental health disclosure form. Please make sure you are disclosing anything to us. We can't really help you if we don't know about a situation. So please take that seriously as well and reach out if we can be of assistance in that area. And then just in general, just know that we are always a resource. It says the provost and vice provost in that video. We are here to support you. We are here to help you navigate these types of situations. So if you do find yourself struggling with mental health, things like culture shock, things like homesickness, these things can happen, right? And so you are not alone. You do not have to struggle alone. We can connect you with resources and make sure you're getting the assistance that you need. Here are some strategies, to help support yourself. Again, this is, what works best for your own self. So, even Brad was just talking about some things, including like, personal boundaries. Those can be really helpful in these situations. Please know that as part of our relationship with Crisis 24 is that all of you are eligible for 6 free telehealth mental health counseling sessions that you can take advantage of. And so please do know that that is an option. And like I said, they're free. If you needed more assistance, it's not like 6 and you're done. We would work with Crisis 24 and Chubb to make sure we're either finding a new telehealth option for you or an option in country so that you can continue on that kind of journey. Things like deep breathing exercises, limiting time on spent social media. I think that's so important. I already talked about put down the phone. So much of this is caused by phones these days, especially social media. Every year I think students in particular are comparing their experiences abroad to other students on experiences abroad, whether that's on the same program or other locations. But please know that people are only posting the highlights of their life on social media. They are not posting the day-to-day struggles or what they're going through. And so please do not take it seriously and do not compare yourselves to other on there. Again, I think that's put the phone down, go touch some grass, get outside, go for a walk, know what works for you if you find yourself in a situation where you're just feeling, overwhelmed. But again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out. We can connect you with resources. So I'm not going to go through all those points, but just know that you should think about what works best for you in these situations, what works best for you here in the United States, what's going to work best for you there, and reach out if we can be helpful. I will touch briefly too on medications and immunizations. So I know a number of you will probably be bringing medications abroad to deal with whether it's mental or physical health issues, which is totally great. Just I want to encourage you to consider the legality of your medications. That is something that Crisis 24 can work with you on. So if you are not sure about the legality of medications, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to Crisis 24 and we can help you figure out the answer to that question. There's a common one I always use about Japan, where in Japan something like Adderall is not legal. So okay, if you were going to Japan and you are have a prescription for Adderall, what are you going to do? All right, we can talk through what might be some alternatives or what the plan might be in that situation. So please don't just assume that you can bring any medication anywhere just because it's legal in the United States. If you're not sure, reach out to Crisis 24 or myself. We can help you look at those restrictions, cultural perceptions, things of that nature. If you are bringing medication, please best practice would be bringing actual like a doctor's note. Just this is more for like customs or border patrol. If they look at you and ask you, hey, what is this for? They're basically checking to make sure you're not bringing illegal substances into the country. If you can provide a documentation, like a letter on doctor's letterhead saying this is the purpose, yes, they need it, they have a medical condition, that's always great. So I would recommend you get that if possible and make sure you're bringing that with you on your carry-on, not putting it into your checked luggage where you're not going to be able to access it at border control, right? That's going to be not available. Make sure you're bringing that adequate supply if and when legal, and make sure you are packing your medication also on your carry-on and not in your checked luggage. We've had situations where students have put it in their checked luggage gets lost, then they're navigating, hey, I don't know how to get medication. We can help you find medication in your host country if it's available there, but you don't want to put yourself in that situation in the first place. I would recommend you also make a copy of your prescription and save online for easy access if needed. Again, this is where you're going to use something like Google Drive or SharePoint, somewhere you can just access that if you do, need to utilize it while abroad. And then when you're packing your prescription, make sure you're putting it in the original bottles and packaging only. It's usually those orange bottles, right? Keep it in that. Do not take it out and put it into something else because that has your prescription information, that has your name on it associated with you, right? So that's what they would be looking at. And then for vaccinations, again, because this is such a general group, this is where I'd recommend you look at the U.S. Department of State's website. They will help you understand if you need or if there's any recommended or required vaccinations for your particular destination. If you do have required, you'll want to make sure you have a copy of your vaccination records for sure. And then finally, I'm going to round it out here with just talk a little bit about emergencies. Again, I know this is a lot of information. We will be sending you this information via email along with Crisis 24 and Chubb information. But briefly, what do we mean by emergency versus a non-emergency? So an emergency is like basically any life-threatening situation or illness, violent crime or assault, if you're a victim of those things, a local world event that could threaten your safety, again, like natural disasters or terrorism, things of that nature, versus a non-emergency, like lost or stolen items, delayed or missed flights, or other transportation disruption, common cold. So not that the non-emergencies aren't important. Those are things that you should let your program program leader, or the program provider for your program know about so they can help navigate that situation. But you might not need to call our emergency phone at 3 o'clock in the morning related to, a cold or allergies or something like that, right? If you do find yourself in an emergency abroad, we kind of designed this flow chart to help you figure out, okay, what's the best course of action. So I'd always recommend if you need something like the police or fire department or an ambulance, you need that immediate assistance, call the 911 equivalent in your host country, just like you would call here in the United States. That is available in the resource list that Katie shared earlier. So click to that. There's a great resource from the State Department that has those 911 equivalents in your host country. It's not always 911, right? So know that, and I would save that to your phone as well. Communicate with your program leader, in-country program contact. Most of your programs are working through providers or host institutions that have their own health and safety teams. That will be something that they cover in your in-country orientation. That is where you want to pay particular attention, because they'll say, hey, after hours or 24/7, if you need assistance on the ground, call this number. Save that number in your phone. That is who you want to reach out to. You can also always call Crisis 24. You can always call the Programs Abroad, our 24/7 emergency hotline. But we're going to try to utilize some of those on the ground resources, right? And so you can go straight to that if they have some resources available, which they should. So please do pay attention during your in-country orientation session. But you do have these other resources if needed. Crisis 24 and our emergency phone number are both 24/7 as well. Like I said, save these numbers. Take a screenshot of this right now. It's also available on the website and in the resource list that we sent you, so you don't have to worry about memorizing them at the moment. But do not just write them down. Take the time, take the 10 seconds to save it into your phone so that you can pull it up if needed. You can pull up PAO emergency phone. You can pull up Crisis 24. If you get the Crisis 24 app, it also has a one hit button saying I need assistance, and it will call them, right? So please utilize that. And then take some time before you travel enrolling in the State Department STEP program. As I said earlier, it will just make sure that they understand that you're abroad, and they will send out any issues or alerts that they are reaching out about. So that can be a really great resource. One final thing that you can do before you travel abroad is just think about, especially, you can't assume that everybody's going to be speaking English abroad in your host country if English is not the main language. And so think about just some common phrases. There's a helpful sheet here. You can take a screenshot, or just you could probably find some good websites that do something similar. But start thinking about, like, how would you say some of these key phrases in that host language. So again, you're not scrambling, help me, I need help. I am lost. No, yes, thank you, U.S. Embassy. So please do think about that and start trying to fill that out so that you can have that available in your brain when you're abroad. Finally, one last bit of information is that all of this is also included in the Study Abroad 101 guide. That is also available in the resource list that Katie sent out earlier in the chat. You can also scan that with the QR code, and that will take you there. That has, even more detail. I know I went through a lot of detail, but it has more information about health and safety and emergencies abroad, your emergency resources, and also other issue areas that we've been talking about: academics abroad, finances abroad, things of that nature. So it's a great resource. Please do utilize it. And I believe with that, I am going to be turning it over to my colleague, Jess.
Hi, everyone. I am Jess, and I'm a coordinator here with Programs Abroad. And Sean did a really great job of covering how to stay safe while abroad. And I am going to talk a little bit about how to tell the difference between what is a cultural difference versus what really is a true safety concern. While you are abroad, you're going to be in an unfamiliar environment. And so it's important to think about how to navigate some of these cultural differences before you go abroad. So let's get into it. You are going to see a few icons over the next few slides. One is, if you see this question mark, that is a rhetorical question that is meant to help you think about the situation that we're discussing. You're also going to interact with a few polls. You've already had some practice with that with Brad. And then finally, when you see the light bulb, we're going to talk about the context and talk about some resolution of our situation at hand. So let's get into it. All right, so I'm going to read a scenario to you. After I read the scenario, I will put up a poll where you are going to make meaning of the scenario. So, a group is eating at a dinner table with a guest. The guest picks up their drink and finishes it, then helps himself to another. One of the group members looks at the guest with a blank stare. The guest says, "Oh, shrimp, my favorite," and helps themselves to a serving while everyone is watching. One of the members looks at the others and says, "Oh, they have a good appetite." Another one looks side to side. The guest drops a piece of shrimp on their shirt, and at one point they pick up a piece of food with their fingers. Later, a member comes out with another dish and says, "This dish is not salty enough. No flavor. It's too bad to eat." They smile as they hand the dish to the guest. The guest smiles and takes a bite of the dish. After a few seconds of chewing, the guest says, all this needs is a bit of this," and picks up a condiment and pours it onto the dish. The table is silent. All right, so take a moment and we're going to make some meaning of our poll. How comfortable do you perceive the guest to be? How comfortable do you perceive the group to be? The group's comment on the guest's appetite was, and you're going to do a rating scale 1 to 5. The silence at the table indicated, how acceptable is it for people to express their opinions about a meal? 1, not acceptable, 5, acceptable. How acceptable is this serving size? Right, so go ahead and think about the scenario I just read and answer the poll. All right, so I see the answers coming in. I see that about half of you perceived the guests to be really comfortable. They're, scooping shrimp onto their plate and they're eating and they're giving advice on what to add to the dish. The group, on the other hand, maybe is not quite as comfortable. You kind of read some context there. Maybe there are some cultural differences happening at the table. The group's comment on the guest appetite, about half of you said maybe they didn't think that this was appropriate. The silence at the table did indicate this. And then about a little more than half of you were kind of in the middle of how acceptable is it really for a person to express their opinions about a meal. I believe this is coming from, it depends on where you are, right? It depends on the culture. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this in action. And I'm curious if your perception of the situation changes after you watch the scenario. Katie, you might have to hit the sound. I'm not clicking anything.
Mention.
Let me make a toast.
He shouldn't have had that second glass when everyone else had had only half an inch just for taste.
Shrimp, my favorite.
He should have taken only a small spoonful of the best dish until everyone had had a helping.
He has good appetite.
He shouldn't have bragged he was a fast learner. But the worst was when Rich criticized my mother's cooking, and he didn't even know what he had done. As is the Chinese cook's custom, my mother always insults her own cooking, but only with the dishes she serves with special pride.
This dish not salty enough. No flavor. It's too bad to eat. But please.
Oh,
That was our cue to eat some and proclaim it the best she'd ever made.
Linda, all this needs is a little soy sauce. Oh, oh, oh.
All right, so now that we've seen the scenario, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper. So when you had just read the scenario or heard me read it out loud, why do you think that you answered the way that you did in the polls? What assumptions might you have made subconsciously to arrive at your answer before you saw the scenario play out? Did you assume that this was a family or a guest interaction? And how might your interpretations of the scenario change if the group and guests were replaced? Maybe friend versus friend, family versus child, or a partner cooking for their significant other. And then what cultural values might have shaped the way that you interpreted these cases? So I think the sound may have been cut off at the beginning of the video, but what she says is, there's a few things I realized that I should have told Rich before he met my family. And then she goes on to go through this list of should. I should have told him this. I should have told him this. And with each should, she's indicating a cultural norm for her and her Chinese family that Rich may not have been aware of. It's important to understand that you will encounter customs, values, and behaviors that might surprise you or even confuse you at first. Those are cultural differences that it's important to prepare yourself for before you go abroad. Sorry, guys, this mouse is lagging for me. All right, we have one more to dive into. So this is too hot to handle. So as I read through the scenario, I want you to think about who is involved here. Where are they from? What may they be bringing to the situation? And then you are going to answer in a poll, what would you normally do in this scenario? Josh studies abroad in Florence and lives with a host family. His host mom is very kind and attentive and makes sure that he's comfortable. As the spring semester progresses, the temperatures in the country start to fluctuate. At one point, the temperature reaches 80 degrees. Josh felt very uncomfortable in his host family apartment as it felt as hot inside as it was outside. So, you're Josh. You are hot. What would you do? What would you normally do? Would you open a window? Would you turn on the air conditioning? Would you use a fan? Would you grab an ice pack? Would you change clothes, add some extra deodorant, or would you take multiple showers? All right, so many of us would either use a fan or turn on the air conditioning. When we're hot and we're uncomfortable, we use the tools around us to help cool down our body. So let's see what happens next. All right. So the host mom, he says she's been so kind. She's been so attentive. She sees Josh's discomfort and then she opens up a window to allow ventilation. At night, Josh is still uncomfortable. So as I asked previously, think about who is involved and where are they from. And then with that in mind, I want you to think, is this a cultural difference, a safety concern, or is it both? So the vast majority of you, pushing 80% of you, say, yeah, this is a cultural difference. A few of you say this is a safety concern. Now, there may be situations where this is a safety concern. Is 80 degrees at night a safety concern? Maybe not necessarily. However, if it was hotter, if there was a health condition that Josh needed to think about, maybe it is a safety concern. But the vast majority of you do say this is a cultural difference. Josh noticed that there was a temperature controller on the host family's wall. Whew! He didn't think anything of it, and he lowered that temperature all the way to a nice, comfy 68 degrees. The following day, his host mom was very upset. So I just want you don't have to answer out loud, but I want you to think about in this situation, given everything that his mom, the host mom, and Josh are bringing to the situation, what do you think upset the host mom about Josh's decision to lower that temperature to 68 degrees? Something that was very normal for him and for many of you, given the poll you answered. Why did that upset her? So this is a very real scenario. Okay, many of the locations you are visiting, air conditioning is not the standard. It's not something that everywhere will have. Europeans prefer and are adapted to a natural ventilation. They are highly energy conscious, which may be why Josh is host mom was upset by the situation, and they're very aware of the cost of energy prices. They also have a negative connotation of air conditioning and its perceived impact on human health. Again, for those of you that said safety concern, you're not wrong. The student's body is not used to warmer temperatures. He's used to sleeping in that 68-degree environment, and it could possibly reduce sleep and his productivity while he is studying abroad. So it's important to weigh, is this uncomfortable or is it unsafe? And it's also important to have those open communication channels to communicate with the host mom or perhaps whoever else you're living with. What is going on? What's going on in your mind? What you would like to happen, and work together to find a solution. So when you are abroad, it's important to have a moment to think, what is a cultural difference and what is an unsafe situation? Stay curious, be open-minded, and be ready to learn from those around you. Understand that just because it's different doesn't necessarily mean it is unsafe. Build a support network with the students around you, with your on-site provider, with locals, with your peers. Ask questions, really work to understand the culture that you're in. But at the same time, listen to your gut. If something feels off, maybe it is. And if you are in an unsafe situation, do not hesitate to take one of the avenues that Sean mentioned previously. So thank you for your time. We are going to jump into our next section and wrap it up.
Yeah. Thank you all for sticking it out and sticking with us through our orientation here. Just some next steps for you all as you are heading out onto your programs. One thing you will want to start to think about. I know you all are very excited to go on your program, and so you may not be thinking about what happens when I come back, but culture shock going to your country can be a thing, and culture shock coming back to the US after can also be a thing. So you'll be learning a lot, having a lot of new experiences, meeting a lot of new people, and so that can be challenging when you come back, and maybe your support system that you already have didn't have that same experience as you, wasn't on site with you. So maybe not right now, maybe as you get closer, when you're on site or closer to coming back to the US, thinking about how are you going to kind of leverage this experience? What support network have you created while you were abroad? How can you stay in touch with them to share your time and remember, the things that you've experienced? And maybe also what do you need to do to kind of share your experience once you come back here? And that's a great segue into staying engaged on campus. So one of your opportunities to share your experience with your fellow students, other vols, students who might be interested in going abroad, is joining our student organization for abroad returnees. So this is an alumni organization that really helps, keep you engaged while you're on campus. Students are able to earn a graduation cord for participating in this organization and doing the service requirements, which are often events that either CGE or the Programs Abroad office puts on. So definitely consider joining us again when you come back.
Abroad. I know it's going to be an amazing experience. I'm here today to tell you briefly about how you can frame this experience in a career lens and think about the skills and experiences and competencies you're going to gain while abroad so that you can really sell the value of this experience to future employers or graduate programs. I want you to think holistically about this experience, everything from getting passports and visas to arranging transportation there, learning a new culture, a new housing situation, the coursework that you'll complete, as well as any additional travel that you'll do. You're going to want to frame those experiences through these 8 NACE career-ready competencies. I'm going to briefly introduce them to you. Critical thinking looks at solving problems and thinking through things critically. We have communication, representing both oral and written communication. Teamwork, learning how to work together with others to solve a task or problem. technology, using technology effectively to complete your work and learning about emerging technologies. We have career and self-development, so understanding your career goals and what it takes to reach them, as well as knowing about your strengths and interests and values. Leadership, understanding when it's appropriate to step up into a leadership role. Professionalism, your work output, your punctuality, your work integrity. And finally, equity inclusion, learning to work respectfully with people from different cultures. And I bet that you are going to work on all 8 of those throughout your experience. And before you leave, I encourage you to set some goals about what do you want to learn and accomplish. Are there some of those competencies that you particularly want to hone while you're abroad? Collect stories. When you have challenges, maybe you have challenges navigating the transportation system or in learning how to communicate in the grocery store. Think about how you can turn that into an interview story in the future, because we really want you to learn how to articulate this experience both on your resume and in interviews, as well as letting it help build your professional brand on resources like LinkedIn. When you return to Tennessee, you will have a re-entry workshop, and we will go into much more depth with this career lens and help you learn how to write up the experience on your resume. You can always have career coaching appointments. That's even something you can do virtually while abroad. And we're going to help you learn how to talk about the experience in interviews, help you really refine your LinkedIn profile and get you a great looking headshot. If you want to do any of this work while you're away, you can get started at career.utk.edu. But for now, I hope your trip is amazing, and we look forward to working with you when you return. Go Vols.
Great. Okay. That was just a little video about thinking about leveraging your experience, in your professional career as you move forward. So moving on to just our immediate next steps here, as we wrap up our time, we have the QR codes here so you guys can connect with us. Make sure to complete your pre-departure orientation assessment in your Vols Abroad portal. That's how you'll mark your attendance for today. And of course, all the important things Sean talked about, download the Crisis 24 app, enroll in STEP, all of those good things. And then depending on your type of program, make sure that you're enrolled for your courses or you've completed the request for transfer credit form as applicable. And just a last reminder to do your pre-departure orientation assessment for your attendance. I think this brings us to our bonus materials. So you all are free to go if you have all your questions answered, or drop anything in the Q&A so we can address that. Otherwise, if you want to stick around for the bonus material, please do. Or if you have other questions, we'll be here. Okay. Those of you who are left, you're sticking around for the bonus materials. We can go ahead and get started. So first we'll just talk a little bit more about finances. I know for a lot of us, or for a lot of you, or I know at least for me, studying abroad was a time when I really had to manage my finances. I had a pretty strict budget of what I could and could not spend, maybe even more so than when I was here stateside. So I think setting and keeping a budget is pretty important. Obviously, you guys will be in different locations, so thinking about currency converters, and it can feel a little bit maybe like Monopoly money when you're not sure exactly how much a peso is to a US dollar. So definitely make sure that you have a currency converter and you're taking all of that into consideration when you are making your purchases. Another thing to consider is actually using currency. So whether that is using a credit card or a debit card or cash, that can kind of depend on your country. Some countries are a lot more dependent on physical currency and cash, where others maybe they're cashless now, especially after COVID. So definitely research that before you go, and you'll learn a lot kind of as you go, and you're just there the first couple of days, right? Other things to think about if you are using an ATM, do you have a debit card so you can actually take money out? If you are taking money out, is there a fee associated with that? If you're using a credit card, do you have international fees? Do you not have international fees? So just think of all of those things as you are trying to make your purchases. Additionally, make sure that you talk with your bank and let them know that you are traveling abroad so that your cards don't get frozen or anything like that. And then last, before you go, I mean, we would recommend looking up the cost of living in your city and your country, and just thinking about your budget and how much things are going to cost. So you might find that maybe eating out isn't as expensive, or maybe some kind of groceries are more expensive, just because of different, supply chains and things like that. So there are tools like Nimbeo or other tools that can help you kind of research that cost so that way you're able to accurately predict and forecast what you're spending. Okay, and then here we have a video from one of our study abroad alumni about kind of managing your finances.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I'm a peer advisor here at the Study Abroad office, and I'm going to talk to you about some things I did to manage my money abroad. One of the most important things you should do is take out and withdraw some cash. It's always good if you're traveling outside your host country to use cash. And if you're not using cash, definitely let your bank know that you will be traveling with a credit card so you don't get any flagged alerts or anything. Download a currency converter app. It always helps to compare euros to dollars to see how much you're really spending, just a different perspective on things. And then keep in mind that sometimes credit card companies or debit card companies, whatever bank you have, there sometimes is a fee when you use a credit card. So it's something to keep in mind. And lastly, I know it's super tempting to go out and eat almost every single night. But keep in mind, if you are in an apartment, even if you have a host family, eating at home sometimes is always good, or if you're in an apartment, cooking for yourself will save you an extra money. And groceries are cheap over there, so definitely something to think about.
So transitioning to academics. So this is for students who are participating on a transfer credit program, which is probably most of you who would be studying abroad for a semester. But just a quick overview of how to kind of check the status of your request for transfer credit form if you're not sure yet, or you're not quite sure where that is in the process. These instructions are also in your Vols Abroad portal, so you can reference those at any time. But you would need to log into the Dynamic Forms website by using this link. And you should see some kind of webpage that looks like this with a little PDF icon that you can click on. The other thing when you're looking at this, whether it's because your form's been completed and you're being asked for a final signature, or if you're checking the status of it, is to review these 3 items. So that way you're very clear on which of your courses are approved, and which courses you can use financial aid toward, and which ones maybe aren't approved. So that way, if you do need to make any edits or changes to your registration, you can do that. We certainly don't want students to go and take courses that are not applicable to their degree program. So definitely make sure to review this. So you'll typically be able to see the course that you requested, the kind of credit that you requested, and then this requirement met box is where your advisor has put in, basically whether this course is applicable to your degree program or not. And you'll see this little box that's degree applicable course program of study at the very end, and that's how you know, yes, this course is approved, and yes, I can use financial aid for it. Also, though, make sure for step 2 to review any advisor comments. Sometimes we know a lot of times students aren't sure exactly which courses will count for which requirements. So maybe you wanted to take an arts and humanities course, but you requested multiple courses. This is where your advisor will say, hey, these courses are all approved, but you can only take one of these 2 courses, right? Because you might only need 3 credits for the arts and humanities, if that makes sense. So make sure to review those advisor comments so that way you're enrolling in the courses that you specifically need. And then step 3, make sure that you have looked at the total number of degree applicable hours that financial aid has put on your account. So that way, you know, if you are planning to use financial aid to pay for your program, that you see 12 hours listed there. If not, that means that you're going to need to make changes to your course registration in your request for transfer credit form. And then once you get to this step, you'll also need to make sure to complete the financial aid certification form that's put on your account by One Stop. If you have additional questions about that form, I would direct them to One Stop. But of course, if you have questions about any of this, we're happy to help you. So you can certainly reach out to us or let us know, or drop anything in the Q&A right now, or send us, an email at a later time. Okay. If you're only checking the status of your form, you know that it's with whichever office has the most recent electronic signature pending. So that's just to show that. But again, if you have questions, you can reach out and we can help you figure it out.
All right, so we are down to the few and the faithful. Again, I'm Brad. Thanks for joining us. You guys are in the bonus material section. I wish I could give you extra credit for hanging around, but we are going to wrap up our last bonus section on just doing a little bit more cultural awareness work. And we're going to see if anybody's still awake out there. We're going to do some polls and some fun stuff. So I got a question for you, and we're going to do this through a poll. So how many triangles do you see? All right, so I have 4 different answers. So the answer is 13 triangles, if that's what you answered. That is the correct answer. So how many triangles do you see in this scenario? So this is a totally different scenario. Before, you had lots of different options. This one looks very different than the last triangle. I see a couple different answers here. I see 6 different people that have answered. Let's see. So this poll, it's a little bit of a trick question, because when you define a triangle, it is a 2-dimensional shape with 3 sides, 3 angles, and 3 vertices, which is where the points connect. And by definition, none of those things apply in this picture. So we actually, whereas the first one, we had 13 different triangles, in this picture, there actually are 0 triangles represented, which is a great talking point to think about culture. In many ways, our brains just naturally fill in a lot of gaps when we don't see things. We use what we know about subconsciously, what we would make assumptions about based upon our experiences. And we use that as reference points to decide what we believe or what we think is going to happen in a certain scenario. And so the more experiences we have, the more our brain repeats and kind of gets into an autocorrect mode, which can really set us up for some interesting experiences and interesting assumptions when it comes to culture. Just because something is in front of you doesn't mean that your eyes are actually seeing clearly what it is. So when we walk into cultures that we're maybe unfamiliar with, our conscious awareness doesn't always pick up on what's happening culturally in a different nation or different nationality in a different cultural contexts. So we see the things that we can't see, and oftentimes they shape the things that we do see. So in some ways, it's a little bit like an iceberg, in the sense that when we walk into a culture, a lot of times we see the food, we see the geography, we see architecture, signs, symbols, language, communication, sometimes festivals and rituals. And those are all the things that are indicators for us of what that cultural expectation is. But many times what we can't see underneath are the beliefs about hierarchy, about gender, about sex, life after death, lots of different opportunities there to make assumptions based upon our experiences regarding cultural values that are just underneath the surface. If you go deeper, a lot of times there's attitude towards identities, whether that's a national identity, whether that's a racial identity, a gender identity, lots of different ways that culture will shape identity pieces. And then at the very bottom of that are perceptions. How does a culture deal with concepts like freedom and even silence or success? What does that look like? A lot of times when you walk into new cultures, you're going to be experiencing something that is outside of your conscious awareness. So just keep that in mind as you move into these new experiences. Oftentimes, we don't see things as they are, but we see things as we are. So when you walk into your experiences, we hope that you can really gain some awareness of different cultures, different perspectives that are outside of yourself. One of the best things you can do is ask questions and be open to new experiences. Again, we appreciate you being with us today for our pre-departure orientation. We expect to hear amazing things about your journeys coming up this fall, or for some of you that are doing an all-year experience. Don't forget about the immediate next steps. Tessa went through these earlier, but we'll just kind of use this as a wrap-up for the entire presentation. Complete your PDO assessment in the Vols Abroad portal. Make sure to download the Crisis 24 app. Enroll in STEP and save the PAO contact card in your phone. Katie did an awesome job at creating a resource section for you through that website. It is really informational. So that link that was put in the chat, please download that and save that link somewhere so you can access those resources in the future. Connect with us on our social media and have an incredible experience.